Hey there, I am Barb Higgins, and this is 1,000 Tiny Steps. In this podcast, I share my stories of love, loss, triumph, and tragedy as I continue to retrace my steps and ponder what led to the death of my daughter Molly. By doing so, I hope to not only help myself, but to bring purpose and possibility to those who listen. If you are ready to laugh, cry, shake your head in disbelief, then tie, buckle, face up, or slip on your shoes and join me as we begin our 1,000 Tiny Steps.
Hey everybody, Barb Higgins here, welcoming you to episode 168 of 1,000 Tiny Steps. I just finished eating a bowl of chicken. That's right, a beautiful ceramic bowl full of cooked chicken that I removed from a rotisserie chicken bought at a grocery store, removed all the meat, put it in the fridge. And every day at lunch, I stand at my counter because it's the perfect height to eat while standing. And I get a container of Old Bay seasoning because I love the taste. And I sprinkle it on pieces of chicken and eat until I'm full. Because just chicken at lunch isn't a really balanced lunch, I usually add baby carrots. Sometimes I dip the chicken in hummus. Usually eat some raspberries or something along those lines. Sometimes if there's leftover rice, I'll have rice, but not always. But always chicken and a fruit or a vegetable. And I feel like I'm eating healthy. I'm not eating multi-ingredient processed food, although a rotisserie chicken from a grocery store is likely quite processed. What I'm looking at is a bowl of chicken. When I eat this way, single ingredient foods, even if the single ingredient food is a processed version of such, which is primarily meat in this country, I feel like I'm eating healthy. I'm looking at a healthy meal, a meat and a vegetable, sometimes a starch, sometimes a starchy vegetable like squash. When I follow a diet this way, and I've often sort of followed a paleo-based diet since I joined CrossFit, I get stronger in the gym, I lose body fat and gain muscle. If I couple this with drinking enough water, I feel really, really good. Aches and pains go away, my digestion improves. So it's easy to sort of pick and choose what might be causing this sudden improvement in health. I think first and foremost, the foods I choose to eat, my body responds well to. There are certain foods my body doesn't respond well to, and I don't eat them. But here's the thing. If I suddenly started eating foods that my body didn't respond well to, maybe just junk food, foods that make me gassy, foods that sit heavy in my stomach, red meat that takes a long time to digest, eventually my body figures out how to deal with it and it stops making me feel bad. Or I slowly come to own the new bad feeling as normal and I don't feel bad anymore. The human body is incredibly adaptable. So why am I talking to you about my super healthy processed rotisserie chicken lunch? Because in this season of episodes sharing things that we're lied to about, food is a major one. In its simplest terms, we eat to survive. If human beings didn't eat, they would die. We need to have food, we need to have water. We can last for quite a while without both of those things, but not forever. When I started researching common lies that we're told, my very enthusiastic editor gave me a list of things to look into. School lunch program, got milk, food pyramid, a whole bunch of things. Of course, the health educator in me immediately looks at eating disorders and social constructs around food. Then I start paying attention to people in my life. Who are the heavy ones? What do they eat? Who are the thin ones? What do they eat? What do my fellow CrossFit friends eat? What does my family eat? What does Jack eat? And if you do a deep dive into food and nutrition, you'll see that human bodies at all the different ages and levels of development require very different things. Probably the most perfect food on the planet is breast milk. Now, we only consume breast milk for a few months to a few years, depending on how well your mom can nurse and how much you like breast milk. But breast milk and the relationship between the mother producing the breast milk and the baby drinking it is a symbiotic relationship where the needs of the child trigger what's in the breast milk. Time of day can trigger what's in the breast milk. So breast milk at night has enzymes in it that induce sleep. Breast milk in the morning, enzymes to wake you up. Baby gets sick. Breast milk suddenly is full of colostrum and healthy things that make a baby feel better. Human nature is such that in primitive times, you had to find your food and prepare it. And if you couldn't find it, you didn't have any. And then when we had more organized populations and civilizations and large groups of people living together, communal eating came into play. Looking at hieroglyphics on cave walls and reading ancient books and, autobiographies and history books, hearing stories. Food also plays an incredible role in the social and cultural lives of humans. It's used to mourn. It's used to celebrate. We do it to get together. Come, let's break bread together. Thanksgiving dinner is as much about the eating of the food as it is of the food itself. Religious doctrines can dictate what is and is not okay to eat. Some religions insist on a completely vegetarian and even vegan diet. Other religions insist that food be prepared a certain way so it meets the expectations of God. I think all religious teachings, as written, focus on health and well-being of the person eating the food, and if an animal is involved, the well-being of the animal involved in the eating or that's being eaten. So what are lies and what's truth? Well, here we go again, the great conundrum. Some lies maybe aren't so much dishonesty as opinion and faith-based beliefs. Meat has to be kosher. In the history of looking at kosher foods, it was mostly how it was prepared so that it was safe to eat. Not eating meat on certain days of the week, example of fasting, it maybe has nothing to do with meat. So much goes into food. So for me, in my life, food has always primarily been about not being hungry. I was a relatively picky eater as a child. Being made to sit at a kitchen table until I ate what was on my plate is probably one of the most traumatic memories I have of childhood. I could not stand certain things, and when I ate them, I would gag. And there's nothing worse than being forced to eat something and swallow it while your body is gagging and trying to throw it up. I've never made any of my kids eat. There are some that would say I'm spoiling them, but I just don't feel that creating trauma around food that isn't necessary is helpful. Although Gracie is the only child of mine that I've got yet to see grow up, her eating habits are fantastic. Does she eat junk food? Yes. Is she American and trapped in the American method of eating, meaning big box grocery stores and a lot of processed food? Yes. Does she drink soda? No. Does she drink alcohol? Not much. Does she eat junk food? A little bit. She really eats well and thinks about her food and tries very hard to create healthy meals for herself. When I was 23, a standard breakfast for me, the best hangover breakfast ever, was cold pizza. Sometimes I put mayonnaise on the crust. I got that from world-class marathon runner Bill Rogers. Dip your crust in mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is so good. It's eggs, right? If you're an egg eater, that's a healthy condiment. I would eat Diet Coke was my drink of choice. I could go through a 6-pack of Diet Coke a day easily. Lunch was more diet soda for me, and oftentimes a bag of salt and vinegar chips and a Hostess honey bun. Yeah. And dinner was typically at a restaurant of some sort, so relatively healthy, but not necessarily healthy food. Maybe the meal looked healthy, rice and meat and all this, but restaurant food tends to be super high in salt and preservatives. I was an elite level distance runner on that diet. Could I probably have run a lot faster if I ate better? Oh, heck yes. So where's the dishonesty here? Where are the lies? Well, I would say most of the lies around food are more propaganda, more lobbyists looking to make money on their product. So creating messages that will get people to buy their product. There are all sorts of types of advertising that I learned in this journey, this food episode journey, that instill in the consumer fear. Got milk? Meat, it does a body good. A lot of these slogans and advertisements tell us that if we don't eat this particular food, that we're not going to be healthy. Well, there are plenty of people in the world that don't eat meat, and they're quite healthy. And there are lots and lots of people that don't drink milk, and they're also quite healthy. So then I started to research diets: paleo diet, vegan diet, Mediterranean diet, plant-based diet, vegetarian with dairy, vegetarian without dairy. So many different diets. Macrobiotic diet. I did that once when I was sick. It was an unbelievably cleansing experience. I could never day-to-day live on a macrobiotic diet. Far too much time in food prep. Oh, food preparation. Any information on these particular methods of eating will tell you what this particular idea wants you to believe. If you're in a store full of cookbooks, there's a paleo cookbook and there's a macrobiotic cookbook, two completely different kinds of eating. Any information in the forward of that book or anything you Google about that book is going to give you information that will make you buy that book. It does not mean that what's in the book isn't true. It may or may not be effective for you. So when I was thinking, how would I start what will probably be a couple of episodes on food? I may not do them sequentially, but there'll be more than one. I thought, well, all right, let's just look at the history of human beings. So cavemen, human beings, what were we? How do we eat? So in a rugged, pre-civilized society, human beings lived in the wild. They lived in the woods, or they lived in the tundra, or they lived in the desert. And their environment would dictate where they could find food, how much food they could find, and what it was. And that's what they ate. So I would say almost every human being at some point in history had a diet that had primarily fruits and vegetables, or things, that grew in the ground, nuts and seeds. These are all things that you can forage. You can find plants in most places. Many plants have berries or seeds or nuts, right? You can pick things off of trees, apples, and eat those, and those have seeds. You can plant the seeds or eat the seeds, right? But in the winter, when these things are gone, your likeliest food source would be an animal, would be meat. And so hunter-gatherer. So in a tribal community, the women would care for the children and forage and prepare the food. And the men would go out and hunt the food, kill the buffalo, right? Indigenous cultures ate this way as well. So you have a plant-based diet. You have primarily plants, berries, nuts, seeds, leaves, things like this. And every once in a while, a big old pile of meat. But when the meat is gone, because there was no refrigeration, if you didn't have a way to salt the meat or preserve the meat, you had to eat it. So you cook it, and then I don't know how they preserved it. I didn't dive that deep. Then I got to looking at different areas of the world and how that hunter-gatherer diet looked. So the Inuits, which are in northern Alaska, near the Arctic Circle, the North Pole, not much grows up there. Short summers, if a summer at all. The primary source of food, the primary food eaten, is fish and meat. Like, that's all they eat. Maybe root vegetables, things that grow in the ground. But again, until farming and colonization happened, when you're out foraging for food, you're going to eat what you come across, and meat. A lot of vegan propaganda will tell you that human beings are meant to be herbivores, that we're not meant to eat meat because we don't have big pointy teeth. Well, we do have little pointy teeth that maybe were bigger in other, in anthropologically, 5,000 years ago. But humans have eaten meat throughout the history of time, and fish and fowl. So game, birds and animals, red meat, light pink meat, white meat, fish meat. To be told that human beings aren't supposed to eat meat, it's basically a lie, because in all of time, human beings have eaten meat in some form at one time or another. Humans have also utilized animal products, honey, eggs, milk, fur for clothing. A hardcore vegan will not harm an animal in any way, and they look at taking honey from a beehive as harming an animal. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a very common belief in certain religions, that we must honor and respect the earth, the beings that live in it. But that's one way of eating, and that meets the needs of many, many, many people. So then I got to thinking about other things that we eat. We are the only mammal that drinks the milk of other mammals. Who said we needed milk after we're done breastfeeding? No other animal anywhere, except domesticated animals that get given cow's milk, have milk after they're weaned. So this was part of creating food for the masses in the time where grains started to become a part of life. Now, in a paleo diet, it's like the caveman diet, grains are a small piece of it, because living in the woods and foraging, you wouldn't have stayed in one place long enough to grow and harvest wheat. And you wouldn't have enough time to grow a whole field of wheat, or time to harvest it or carry it with you wherever you went. So a nomadic culture didn't spend enough time to have a big, huge field, right? They ate what was available to them. So when we started having farmers and a grain industry, the agricultural industry, growing fruits and vegetables and creating fruits and vegetables and grains to feed large numbers of people easily, human diet changed. And this is where milk came into play. This was primarily European culture. It was not Asian or African cultures that started this method of eating. Over time, as humans evolved, primarily, Western European, Eastern European, American culture, white people mostly, developed an enzyme that can process lactose. Asian culture and African American culture, or African culture, didn't introduce milk in this way. So as those people evolved in their native countries, they didn't develop this enzyme. Asians and African Americans, or Black Americans of any culture in America, told to drink milk every day, are going to have issues, are going to have a lot of digestive issues, and are lactose intolerant. Nothing is wrong with you when you're lactose intolerant. That's how humans were designed. As I said in the beginning, the human body is incredibly adaptable. And so people that started having milk as a part of their diet, 3 or 4 generations in, the body developed an enzyme to process lactose. So I can drink milk. I feel a lot better when I don't. Part of my Get Better Girl challenge, I gave up dairy. And while I eat yogurt, that's really my only dairy right now. Sometimes cheese, but not a lot. The Inuits also, in a much more modern example, in northern Alaska, the school lunch program, to receive money from the government, you have to include milk. And in the elementary schools in northern Alaska, every little carton of milk gets thrown out. So all that milk is produced, the cartons are made. Talk about waste and talk about a bad footprint on the planet. all the milk just gets thrown away because that culture doesn't drink milk. There are not cows to be milked up there. Those people didn't develop an enzyme for processing milk. It doesn't even dawn on them to drink milk. You can't receive money from the federal government in America for school lunch programs without making sure milk is the only option to drink. You can't even put water on the tray because now they have a choice and they might not drink the milk. This is what I mean. So much of what we think about food is fed to us, no pun intended, by the person. The person feeding us the information wants us to buy whatever product they're promoting. What are truths and what are lies? Well, being told what you should eat is probably propaganda-based. Being told to simplify your diet and try to eat healthy foods, being told what kind of food to eat in terms of how it's made, makes sense. So if I were to say to you, really, you should follow a single ingredient diet, that's probably not a lie. Single ingredient foods are natural. They're not processed. American food is so processed. 3 generations ago, wouldn't even recognize 90% of what we eat. They would look at it and say, what is this? Because food was made from scratch all the time. When I watched that Netflix series, Living to 100, Secrets of the Blue Zone, the healthiest people prepared their meals. They didn't open a package and stick it in the microwave and eat it for lunch. They made it. They cut the vegetables, they chopped the fruit, they made the sandwich. They took the time to create the meal and then sat and ate the meal. So there's more to food than just nutrition. Interesting. When I Googled like the top 10 healthiest diets, what came up for me were several versions of the Mediterranean diet. All of these diets had some level of grains, some more than others. Lots and lots of rice in Asian diets, tons of rice. And of course, Asian bodies would process the rice well because it's been a part of their diet for generations and generations. Evolution has created that as a staple food for those people in that diet, right? All of the top 10 healthiest diets had vegetables and fruit at every meal. Probably that was the biggest amount of food on the plate. And all of them had some sort of meat included in the diet, not a regular part. It was like once or twice a week or 2 or 3 times a month, like not a lot. But there wasn't one straight vegan or vegetarian diet on the list. All of them had a variety of foods, eaten a variety of times in a variety of amounts. It really was fascinating, I have to say. In looking at what to talk about in this episode, I don't think it's my place at all to tell you what I think are true, what I think are lies. I know what works for me. There are books on eating for your blood type. There are books on eating for your nationality, for your ethnicity. There are books on eating for diabetes, books on eating for heart disease, books on eating for cancer. I think the biggest lies in the food industry are about how the food is made and how safe it is to eat and what is and isn't healthy. Probably the first biggest lie that comes to mind for me that I remember as a child growing up is that a bowl of cereal with some sugar on it in milk was a healthy breakfast. I had that for breakfast every day. Processed cereals, Froot Loops, Trix, Apple Jacks, are full of food dyes and sugar and preservatives, chemicals. There's nothing natural about cereal, or not the cereal I ate growing up. Very, very high in sugar. Another one I remember very, very well is that Wonder Bread was super healthy and that you should feed your children Wonder Bread. It's soft. I had bologna sandwiches, bologna and mustard sandwich on Wonder Bread with a Twinkie, maybe an apple, not always. Pop-Tarts, all of these delicious, yummy, colorful foods were really marketed to kids. My house was full of them, and I don't have a mother that allowed me to have junk food. I think she thought what she was buying in the grocery store was healthy because TV commercials said it was, and you trusted the brand names. When I got into high school and started running and my asthma, I noticed that certain foods affected my asthma. I cut down a lot on milk on race days because it made me wheezy, made me phlegmy, so I didn't drink milk so much. I realize now it's not because it made my throat phlegmy. Lots of asthmatics have a hard time digesting milk, and the hydrochloric acid that you have in your lungs goes into digesting the milk, and then you wheeze. And that was an interesting thing. And I learned that through studying macrobiotic diet, which looks at a whole bunch of different things. I think 100 people being told that the same diet is good for all of them is a lie. That's propaganda. In a room full of 100 people, you're going to have varying degrees of ethnicity, age, gender, health, chronic illness, family history, culture, religion. But I do think probably the biggest truth in food is that single ingredient, locally grown or produced foods are the healthiest foods. That would be the truth. And I don't think in America, there are too many people that can actually live that way. We rely on big box grocery stores. I'm going to do 3 big lies that sort of cover all of it and then end for today. So big lie number 1, shopping the outside of the perimeter of the grocery store is the healthiest way to shop. If we were to assume that everything on the perimeter of a grocery store, which is produce, meat, dairy, eggs, cheese, right? It's all the food that goes bad, right? It's not the canned stuff. It's not the processed stuff. It's all the food that you have to buy and eat. If it all were processed properly and was truly single ingredient and wasn't sprayed with herbicides and pesticides and everything else, sure, the perimeter of the grocery store is the healthiest place. But the highest incidences of food poisoning, of chronic illnesses like C. diff, which are caused from becoming resistant to antibiotics, E. coli getting into your food, all of those things come from the perimeter of our grocery stores. There was a number of children died. They ate hamburgers there and they weren't cooked enough and they died. These kids died of food poisoning. That E. coli died. It was all on TV and everything else. And so the meat industry was really put under a microscope and really, really held to task on keeping their processing transparent and honest and insisting that food be processed in a safe manner. They said that as long as they put on their little package that be sure to cook the meat, because if you don't, you could get sick, let them off the hook. The consumer should know that raw meat's not safe. Lots of the times, consumers have no choice over how long the meat was cooked, or they have to trust the chef in restaurants, for example. And this fast food restaurant was an example. They were trying to cut corners, and so they didn't cook it as long as they should, and it killed people. Once that was taken care of, there was a sudden rise in deaths from romaine lettuce, and all this romaine lettuce was taken off the shelves. Well, come to find out, you have like a cattle farm or meat processing food. Lots of food is made in California. And so you have animals, a farm, right? So you have farm animals that shit and their excrement is in the ground. And when there's lots and lots of animals in one place, you have a lot of it. So you have to shovel it somewhere. So it goes into these like ponds, these like poop ponds kind of. And what happens is all that water leaches into the groundwater, or, rainwater gets in there and it's used to water the crops in the farm next door. So you're watering crops with water that's processed animal poop. I'm not explaining it well, but that's just basically it. It's like watering your garden with toilet water that's full of poop. Yes, I'm sure we'd all do that. I know that in Concord, animal manure is used to fertilize dirt, right? It's fertilizer. When they spread it on the cornfields in Concord in the spring, it's disgusting. You can smell it. It's just poop. I know that there are countries where human poop is used to fertilize crops. In terms of food poisoning and food safety, the perimeter of the grocery store is the least safe place to buy your food. So go to a local farm stand. If you want meat, find a local farm that sells meat that's processed right there. So it's not in a big, huge meat facility. Watching some documentaries on how our food is processed, how chickens and cows and pigs, how bacon is made. It's disgusting. There are a couple of communities in North Carolina where the cancer prevalence is so high from some of the chemicals used and from the rotting carcasses that then get churned up and put into food that gets eaten. The other piece is what's put into our food. So when you think of processed foods like, crackers and cookies and things like this, you think of food dyes and you think of preservatives, salt and sugar. But animals that are being raised to slaughter to feed, the masses are full of antibiotics. So we ingest the antibiotics. So the medical industry has often said doctors need to stop prescribing antibiotics so much because humans are becoming resistant. But the main reason we're becoming resistant is because we're eating it in our meat. We're also being told that meat 3 times a day is okay. And maybe it is for some people. And maybe really healthy, simply processed meat, locally processed meat, doesn't have all these other things in it that can make it unhealthy. But the meat that my healthy chicken lunch, who knows how long ago that chicken was slaughtered and what was put into that chicken to make it plump and yummy for me to stand in my kitchen and eat how many months later. C. diff is a horrible infection, bacterial infection, that kills a lot of elderly people in nursing homes and rehab facilities. And that's a very antibiotic resistant illness, as is staph infections now, or strep infections, MRSA. All of these things come from human beings adapting to antibiotics. So that's lie number 1. that shop the perimeter of those big box grocery stores and you'll be healthy. Okay, maybe. Lie number 2 was in the 80s and 90s, and it was that high-fat foods are bad for you. Now, only eating high-fat foods could be bad, but the Inuits eat meat all the time, and they're not obese. They don't die of heart disease and obesity and such things. They're very, very healthy. So what is it? High-fat food is unhealthy. Cut all the fat out of your diet. Low-fat milk. Cut all the fat off your meat. Only eat lean beef. Non-fat yogurt, right? So what happened with low fat is they took fat out of food. Okay, fat is flavorful. Fat makes things taste good. So like Entenmann's, raspberry Danish, fat-free, okay? They took the fat out of it by using margarine instead of butter, by putting a lot of sugar in there so that it would still taste good and you want to eat it. So it became a less healthy version than a regular butter and whole milk filled pastry would have been. So that was a huge push in the 80s, along with margarine is better for you than butter. And I've talked about this before, that if you put a stick of margarine out on the pavement, not one ant will ever come over and crawl around that margarine. And when you look at why margarine was created, cows wouldn't even eat it. It wasn't created to be consumed by people at all. I don't even think it was created to be consumed. Butter is worse for you than margarine. Now that's false now, but you can still find margarine in grocery stores. People still eat it. It's still on the market. So that was another huge lie when I was in high school. A third lie is that high cholesterol, hardening of the arteries, is because of fat. And really, a lot of those diseases, clogged arteries and high cholesterol, is because of sugar. When you eat a lot of sugar, your pancreas kicks in and insulin is shot into your bloodstream, and insulin balances out the sugar. But fat from the food you eat binds to the insulin and clogs up your arteries. Yeah, if you eliminate fat, there's less fat in there but if you eliminated sugar, the fat wouldn't stick around, if that makes sense. It's a really oversimplified version. So we are told all the time to avoid everything except really what's at the basic root of most illnesses, and that would be sugar. So these are some of the lies that have sort of been in play for a long time. Why are we told these things? Why was there this huge Got Milk campaign? And I have a picture, I need to dig it up, of my cross-country team, and we sent it in. There was like a contest, and so we ran up Mount Kearsarge. We used white makeup to make milk mustaches. We all had a glass of milk on top of this mountain. We didn't win anything, but we sent it in, and it was Got Milk. And it was this huge campaign with all these people with these big milk mustaches from drinking their milk. That was a huge campaign. Where's the beef? Was another one. It was a Wendy's commercial, but it was all about eat beef for lunch. Beef, it's what's for dinner. All of those commercials are thick in my memory because we were really told that to be healthy human beings, we needed to eat these foods. I'll wrap it up a little bit with the food pyramid. So the food pyramid, when it first came into play, the bottom was grains, breads, grains, all those things. And then it went up to fruits and vegetables. And then it went up to dairy and meat. And then it went up to like sugars and stuff. So logical in some respects, but really the bottom of any food pyramid should be fruits and vegetables. It should be nuts and seeds, all the things that you can forage, that you eat right from nature with no preparation whatsoever. You can't go take a bite of a giraffe, right? It's not going to taste very good. So the food pyramid was designed to convince Americans that this was how to eat healthy. And when you look at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, when you look at American Diabetes Association, when you look at United States Cancer Society, when you look at the Susan B. Komen Foundation, all these amazing organizations whose mission is to keep people healthy, all of them are funded by lobbyists. Lobbyists are people that go to the government and say, we'll pay you, Dan and Yogurt will pay you all this money if you get people to drink milk or whatever. Like it's pretty corrupt. But all of the things I just mentioned are sponsored by Kraft, like Kraft macaroni and cheese, Cisco, which is like oils and stuff, Dannon, which is super processed yogurt, Nestle. Nestle is like a parent company for every candy bar and potato chip you've ever eaten in your life. So you look at these companies, these food companies that sponsor the Diabetes Association and the Cancer Association and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. No wonder these things are promoted to us because the money that the lobbyists bring into play is huge. They go to the government and get the government to pass laws. I will tell you that the food pyramid has morphed and is now much more. It's myplate.org, and it's a picture of a plate, and it shows you how much of each sort of macro you should eat. So macronutrients are basically carbs, protein, fats. So carbs would be fruits and vegetables and starches. Those are all your carbs. So that ends up taking should take half the plate. And then meat, proteins and fats, not necessarily meat, would take the other half. So this is assuming that you're eating meat or that you have some sort of food that is only there for protein. So eggs, tofu, soy products if you're vegetarian, also never designed for human consumption. So beans, legumes, all of those things have ample protein. This is significant because this method of deciding what kids should eat goes into the school lunch program, which I'll get into in the next episode because it's unbelievable. And being a school board member, it was mind-boggling to me. So I have a good friend that I went to college with, and she is a hardcore carnivore. She feels at the bottom of her food pyramid is all meat, red meat, every kind of meat. She eats a ton of meat. She is incredibly healthy. She's 2 years older than me. She does not look 2 years older than me. She's an athlete. She had minimal menopause issues, super, super healthy. I don't think she drinks a lot of alcohol. I don't think she eats a lot of sugar. I think everything she eats is healthy. A lot of what she eats is meat. Then I had KK, who's hardcore vegan, unbelievably healthy. She spends a lot of time finding healthy food. And when she has delicious things that she likes, she makes sure to eat those things all the time. My neighbors, Jen and Dave up the street, are also vegan. And they got into it for more health reasons than politically correct reasons, food allergies and things like this. Kenny, as a kidney transplant recipient, just has to be careful to eat a balanced diet. A lot of his medications can mess with his weight and that sort of thing. He's on some diabetes medicine. So American Diabetic Association, right? Sponsored by Dan Yogurt and Nestle's and all the things diabetics should eat. The dance around food and what's true and what isn't is profound. I know in my own life, I am sort of a practicer of moderation. Sometimes I'm very, very strict and rigid with what I eat. I go for days and days, really, really avoiding everything. And then other times, like sort of now, 90% of my diet is unbelievably healthy as I can make it in my life. Fruits, vegetables, rice, chicken, meat, not tons of it, but enough. Whole grain pasta or red lentil pasta, plant-based, but with a healthy portion of meat. And for the most part, I feel good. I do know that certain foods will make me feel really crappy. When I go out to eat at a restaurant, I feel terrible. And to me, that's a sign that my sodium intake is low and that I'm healthy and that I eat really well, because restaurant food tends to make me feel sick. So in my life, in the life of Barb, food has never, ever been more to me than an easy way to not be hungry anymore. With all of the gobbledygook around food, another aspect of food in our lives is the role it plays emotionally, socially, spiritually, mentally. And there are eating disorders. In a culture that likes to tell people what to do and uses food as a tool to sell things and uses the bad effects of the food they sell to push medications to fix those things. Control around food is a huge piece of American culture, and eating disorders are prevalent, primarily among girls and women, because girls and women are told they need to look a certain way. And although in the beginning, eating disorders might have to do with food and fat and feeling fat and all this, very quickly, that becomes secondary to the element of control. And that when you can control what you eat, you somehow win the day. And then the rush you get from starving yourself all day ups the ante. So as I finish this and wrap this up, I'll be heading off to Disney, which means for 7 days, I'll be staying in a hotel. Now we have a full kitchen, so we can go to the grocery store and cook our food. That's been super helpful, not eating at restaurants the whole time that we're away, because it's just super unhealthy. The food's just not healthy. So we do better than we used to. I'll give a list to Gracie tomorrow so she can buy everything we need, so we don't have to go to the grocery store right when we arrive. It'll be a good thing. What's food like for you? Are you a vegan? Are you a vegetarian? Are you a paleo eater? Are you on the keto diet? Have you done the Whole30? Have you done a 75 hard? Have you picked a diet and stuck to it? The first 3 words of diet are die. So I think, again, my one truth that I will leave with you is that food is unique and personal and dependent upon many factors, many of which we cannot control. So next time, I will talk more about school lunch programs. Also, I'll talk about food stamps and how a lot of those totals are, money that you get every month is calculated, and how that varies from other food benefits given to other groups. It's interesting how we value people and how we really don't value children when it comes to nutrition at schools. Thank you for listening. And please reach out and share with me. I got to get creative on the socials with little questions and surveys and things. I would love to know what you eat and what you don't eat and why. And if you struggle with food, and if you're a junk food junkie and you just don't care. Anyway, be good to yourself. Go eat a bag of baby carrots, although they're probably very processed and who knows what they were sprayed with, and if something was added to make them orange. Be good to someone else? Give them that bag of baby carrots. And as always, have a good day, everybody.
Hey, thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Feel free to leave a review and share my stories with your friends. Please reach out with your own stories, as I love connecting with my listeners. If you would like to get to know Molly, head over to mollybfoundation.org to see what she is all about. If you want to see what I'm up to next, you can find me on Instagram at barb_444, on Facebook as Barb Higgins, and at my website, 1000tinysteps.com. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter, a weekly way to find out what's up in the life of Barb Higgins.